My brother came to my front door with a moving truck, his children holding suitcases, and the spare key my mother had given him behind my back. He thought that key would open my house. Instead, a stranger answered the door. But the real wound started at my mother's dinner table, when she called me a selfish loser for keeping the only home I had ever built. The first thing Deacon did was try the old key. He had a moving truck behind him, his wife standing beside the porch with folded arms, and his children waiting near the curb with backpacks at their feet. My mother stood behind him like she still had the right to decide who belonged in my house. The key slid into the lock. It did not turn. Deacon tried again, harder. A moment later, a man none of them knew opened the door from the inside. "This is my brother's house," Deacon snapped. The stranger looked past him at the moving truck and said, calmly, "Not anymore. I closed on it last week." By then, the house had not been mine for 7 days. But the mistake had started 3 months earlier, at my mother's dinner table, when she called me a selfish loser for keeping the home I had paid for. That Sunday evening in early March, I walked into my mother's split-level house carrying a cherry pie from the bakery on Library Road. I had brought dessert to Sunday dinner for years. It was one of those small habits families expect from the reliable one, until the reliable one stops and everybody acts betrayed. Deacon's SUV was already in the driveway. Kendra's minivan sat behind it. Through the front window, I could see my nephew Silas at the table, swinging one foot under his chair, and little Willa bending over a napkin with a crayon in her hand. Mom opened the door before I knocked twice. "Calder," she said too brightly. "Good, we're all here." That should have warned me. Inside, the house smelled like pot roast and lemon cleaner. The oak dining table was set with the same brown plates we had used when Dad was alive. His chair still sat at the end, empty but never moved. Above the sideboard, his framed picture watched the room with that tired half-smile he used when he did not want to pick a side. I sat near his chair. I always did. Deacon kept checking his phone. Kendra helped Willa cut her carrots into tiny pieces. Silas talked about school, but his voice had that careful tone kids use when they know adults are waiting to argue. Halfway through dinner, Deacon cleared his throat. "Our rental is getting tight," he said. "Silas is too old to share space like that. Willa needs a real room. Kids need a yard, Calder." I nodded because, at first, I thought he was venting. Families vent. People complain about rent, schools, neighbors, bills. That did not mean they expected you to hand over your life, Kendra added. Your neighborhood is better for them. The school district, the space, the safety. It would give them a fresh start. Willa pushed her napkin toward Silas. I glanced down and saw a little yellow room drawn in crayon. A bed, a window, a small square that looked like a closet. I still did not understand. Mom put down her fork and looked straight at me. "Your house has 3 bedrooms, she said. "A garage, a yard, more than one man needs." The room became too quiet. "What are you asking?" I said. She folded her hands as if she had practiced this. "I'm saying you should give the house to Deacon." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. I looked at Deacon, waiting for him to laugh or correct her. He did neither. "Mom," I said, keeping my voice low, "that's my home." Deacon leaned back in his chair. "You have rooms. I have a family." That should tell you enough. That line landed harder than if he had shouted. I looked at Silas, then Willa, then back at my brother. He was not asking for help. He was ranking our lives and expecting me to accept last place. I said, "I bought that house. I fixed the porch. I rebuilt the garage wall. Dad helped me set up the workbench before he got sick." Mom's face tightened. "Don't hide behind your father," she said. "Your brother is drowning." That was how it had always worked in my family. Deacon broke things. I fixed them. His truck needed work. I loaned money. His deck rotted. I spent 2 weekends with a drill and a level. Silas's baseball camp payment was due, and somehow Deacon's card would not go through. Every time, Mom called it family, but a house was not a favor. "This is not a couch or a spare room," I said. "This is where I live." Kendra looked down at her plate, not ashamed enough to stop it, just uncomfortable enough to pretend she had not heard. Then Mom's patience cracked. "You selfish loser," she said. "His kids need it more than you do." Nobody moved. Silas stared at his plate. Willa's crayon stopped halfway across the napkin. Deacon looked relieved. Like Mom had finally said the ugly part for him. I did not yell. I did not throw my chair back. I just looked toward Dad's empty seat and wondered, in a way that hurt more than I expected, whether he would have defended me if he had still been there. Mom kept going. You can rent something smaller. Deacon can't shrink his children. I stood slowly. I'm leaving before I say something I can't take back. Deacon gave a short laugh. That's right. Walk out. Prove us all right. At the door, Mom said, your father would be ashamed of this. My hand paused on the knob. I wanted to turn around. I wanted to ask her if Dad would be proud of them sitting at his table, measuring my life by how useful it could be to Deacon. Instead, I opened the door and stepped into the cold evening. On the drive home, Bethel Park looked ordinary. Porch lights, wet pavement, a basketball hoop at the end of a driveway. Nothing in the neighborhood knew my family had just tried to vote me out of my own life. When I pulled into my driveway, my house was quiet. The porch I had painted, the office I had built, the garage where Dad's old workbench still stood. I told myself they would cool down, but deep inside, I knew dinner had not been the start of a conversation. It had been the start of a takeover. I did not answer my mother that night. Maybe I should have. Maybe you would have. What would you have said if your own mother called you selfish for keeping the home you paid for? I thought the worst thing they had done was ask me to give up my house. Then, one Saturday, I came home and heard a tape measure snapping open upstairs. 2 weeks after that dinner, I spent a Saturday afternoon at the hardware store, buying fence boards, screws, and a small can of white paint. It was the kind of errand that usually settled me down. Wood, measurements, receipts, a job with a beginning and an end. Simple things. When I pulled into my driveway, that calm disappeared. Deacon's SUV was parked crooked near the garage. Kendra's minivan sat along the curb. I had not invited them. No one had called. For 1 second, I thought maybe Mom had fallen, or one of the kids had gotten hurt, because that was still where my mind went first. Family meant emergency before it meant betrayal. Then I saw my garage door half open. I got out, left the hardware bags in the back seat, and walked in through the garage. Dad's old workbench stood against the wall, just as I had left it. Nothing there had moved. Then I heard it again. A sharp snap from upstairs. A tape measure. Inside the kitchen, the first thing I saw was Willa's pink jacket hanging over one of my chairs. Kendra's purse sat on my counter like she had dropped it there in her own house. A juice box leaned beside the sink. Nothing was broken. That almost made it worse. They had not forced their way in like strangers. They had walked in like my permission was already understood. Deacon? I called. No answer. Then Kendra's voice floated down from the hallway above me. Measure that wall again. The bed would fit better there. I went up the stairs slowly. Not because I was afraid, but because part of me already knew what I was about to see. They were in my office. Deacon stood near the window, stretching the tape measure across the wall. Kendra held a notebook. Silas sat on the floor with a pencil, sketching a rectangle under the window. My desk was pushed slightly off-center. My permit files were stacked against the bookcase. The framed photo of Dad standing beside my porch had been turned sideways. And Dad's wooden box, the one that held his old pocket watch and folded notes, had been shoved toward the edge of the desk to make room for Kendra's notebook. I looked at Deacon. What are you doing in my office? He barely glanced at me. Office? Come on, Calder. It's basically an empty room. That sentence did more than insult the space. It erased everything in it. My work, my files, the repairs I had planned, the quiet evenings I had spent there trying to build a life that did not depend on being useful to him. I stepped past Kendra and moved Dad's box back to the center of the desk. Kendra sighed. We're just trying to picture what makes sense. This would be perfect for Silas. We're not asking you to be homeless, Deacon added. Just reasonable. Then he nodded toward the hallway. The basement is finished enough. You can make it work for a while. I looked down at Silas. He was 12, old enough to sense tension but too young to understand how adults dress selfishness up as planning. He held up his sketch, uncertain. Uncle Calder, he asked. Dad said you can sleep downstairs until you find somewhere smaller. Is that true? I wanted to look at Deacon when I answered. Instead, I kept my eyes on the boy. Nobody, I said quietly. That's not true. Silas lowered the paper. Kendra's mouth tightened. Calder, the kids need stability. Your mom said you would come around once you calmed down. There it was. My refusal had already been downgraded to a mood. Something temporary, something they could wait out. I turned to Deacon. No one is moving into this room. He laughed through his nose. You're making this harder than it has to be. This room is not empty, just because none of you care what is in it. For the first time, Deacon looked annoyed instead of confident. I asked, how did you get in? Kendra glanced at him. Deacon rolled the tape measure back into its case. Mom gave me the key. He said it like that explained everything. Like my mother handing over access to my house, made it clean. I told them to leave. Not loudly, not with a scene. Just clearly enough that even Deacon understood I was done discussing it in front of his son. After they walked out, the house settled into a silence that did not feel like mine anymore. I stood in the office, looking at the wall they had measured, the chair they had moved, the place where Dad's picture had been turned. Near the closet, Silas had left his sketch on the floor. At the top, in small pencil letters, he had written, "My room." I picked it up carefully. I did not tear it. Silas had not created this. He had only believed what the adults told him. When people start measuring your space without asking, they have already decided your answer does not matter. I folded the paper and placed it in the top drawer of my desk. At the time, I thought the tape measure was the violation. Then I found out my mother had handed Deacon the key. Deacon did not leave right away. Kendra took Silas out to the minivan, probably so the boy would not hear whatever came next. Deacon stayed in my kitchen, arms folded, acting like I was the one who had made the afternoon uncomfortable. Give me the key, I said. He pulled it from his pocket and dropped it on the table with a small clink. There. Happy? I looked at it before I touched it. The old plastic tag was scratched, cloudy from age, but Dad's handwriting was still there. Calder spare, emergency only. I remembered the day he made that tag. I had just bought the house, and he said, "Your mother should have one in case something happens." You never know. Back then, it had felt like care, a quiet little backup, a way for family to reach me if I fell in the garage or got sick and did not answer the phone. Now that same key felt like a warning I had ignored. You walked into my house without asking, I said. Deacon shrugged. Family shouldn't need an appointment. You were measuring my office. We were planning. That's worse. His jaw tightened. I picked up the key. Dad gave Mom this in case I got hurt, not in case you wanted my house. For half a second, Deacon looked away. Then his face hardened again. I called Mom and put her on speaker. She answered like she had been waiting. Calder, don't start. Did you give Deacon my key? Yes, she said. No hesitation. This is a family matter. This is my house. Don't be dramatic. It's still a family house. I stared at the table. My name was on the deed. My paychecks had covered the mortgage. My weekends had repaired the gutters, porch, and garage. But to her, ownership disappeared the moment Deacon wanted something. That key was for emergencies, I said. Your brother's situation is an emergency. His children need stability. If your father were here, he would tell you to help him. That hit the one place she knew still opened. I ended the call before my voice changed. Deacon said I was making it ugly. Kendra came back inside and said they were only trying to find a practical solution. I told them both to leave. After they drove away, I put the key in my desk drawer, not back on the hook, not where anyone could reach for it again. 3 days later, I came home from work and found an envelope in my mailbox from the Bethel Park School District. It was addressed to Silas Voss at my address. I opened it at the kitchen counter. Inside was a residency packet listing Deacon and Kendra as guardians. My house was written as the expected residence. Then I saw the line that made my hand stop. Expected move-in date, June 1. They had not only taken my address, they had put a date on my disappearance. I called Deacon. Kendra got on too, her voice tight. The deadline was coming up. We had to put something down. You put down my house. We use the address the kids will be living at, she said. Deacon cut in. You're not really going to ruin Silas's school over a technicality, are you? I looked at the packet on the table, then at the drawer where the key sat. A home is not a technicality. Neither of them answered right away. I ended the call before they could twist the conversation back toward the children. Then I photographed every page of that packet. I took the key from the drawer, set it beside the forms, and started a folder on my phone. I named it House. I used to think family boundaries sounded cold. But standing there with that school form in my hand, I started wondering where you draw the line between helping family and letting family take over your life. I thought the key and the school form were the worst of it. Then I found out they had already told the neighborhood I had said yes. I learned how far the story had spread in the coffee aisle at Giant Eagle, with a bag of ground roast in my hand and my name already being used in a decision I had never made. It was 3 days after the school packet showed up in my mailbox. I had gone to the store after work because the house felt too quiet and because ordinary errands can fool a man into thinking his life is still ordinary. Milk, coffee, sandwich meat, a few things for the week, nothing complicated. Then Verna Holloway came around the corner with her cart. Verna had lived 2 houses down from me since before I bought my place. Retired librarian, silver hair always pinned neatly, the kind of neighbor who remembered trash day after holidays and brought banana bread when Dad passed. Called her, she said, smiling. I heard the news. I kept my hand on the coffee bag. What news? Well, your brother and his family moving into your place. She leaned closer, warm and proud, like she was congratulating me. That's generous of you. Those children will love having a yard. For a moment, the aisle noise faded into a dull hum. Who told you that? I asked. Verna blinked, finally noticing my face. Your mother mentioned it after church, and I saw Kendra's post. I thought it was settled. Settled. That word followed me all the way to checkout. I paid for my groceries without remembering what the cashier said. Outside, I loaded the bags into my truck, sat behind the wheel, and did not start the engine right away. My house was still mine. My answer had still been no. But somehow, around me, a whole neighborhood had been invited to believe otherwise. They announced my yes so loudly that my no would sound like cruelty. When I got home, I put the groceries away slowly, then carried my phone into the garage. Dad's workbench sat against the wall, scratched and steady. I opened Facebook with one thumb, already knowing I was not going to like what I found. Kendra's post was near the top. A photo of Silas and Willa standing in front of my fence. Willa held a folded drawing. Silas looked uncomfortable, like he had been told to smile and could not quite manage it. The caption read, "New beginnings soon. So grateful when family chooses the children." Under it, relatives and church friends had written comments. About time Calder stepped up. Those kids deserve that yard. Your dad would be proud. That last one made me put the phone down on the workbench. Dad's name again. They kept dragging a dead man into every corner of this because he could not stand up and correct them. He could not say what he meant. He could not tell my mother to stop spending his memory like loose change. I picked the phone back up and saw another comment. When is the big move? Kendra had answered. June 1, if everything stays on track. There it was again, the date from the school packet. Not just written on a form anymore, but sitting in public, under a picture of my fence, as if my life had become a community project. I typed one sentence. I never agreed to this. My thumb hovered over the screen. I could already hear what would happen. Kendra would say I embarrassed the children. Deacon would say I was making a family matter public. Mom would call me cold. Everyone would look at that photo of Silas and Willa and decide I was the grown man picking a fight under a sweet post. So I erased the sentence. Then I took screenshots. The photo, the caption, the comments, the timestamp. June 1. Not because I knew exactly what I would do with them yet, because I was done letting their version become the only record. I printed the screenshots at my small desk printer and placed them behind the school packet in the folder I had started. I added Silas's sketch from my office. Then I wrote a new label across the front. House pressure. The key showed how they got in. The school form showed how they planned to stay. The post showed how they wanted the world to clap before I could object. That night, Mom called. I let it ring twice before answering. Verna said you acted strange at the store, she said. Why are you telling people Deacon is moving into my house? She sighed, like I was making her tired. People are happy to see you finally doing the right thing. I never said yes. You haven't said no to the children. There it was, neat, polished, and cruel. You don't get to use them as my answer, I said. Mom's voice dropped. Listen to yourself. You are becoming hard-hearted. Deacon is under terrible stress. Kendra is worried sick. Those kids need something stable, and you have more than enough. Having something doesn't mean everyone else gets to assign it. Family doesn't talk like that. No, I said. Family usually asks before taking. She went quiet just long enough for me to know I had hit the truth. Then she said, Your father would not recognize you. I looked at his workbench, at the marks his hands had left in old wood, and something in me settled, not peacefully, more like a board finally locking into place. After the call, I sat in the garage for nearly an hour. The light above the bench buzzed softly. A few cars passed outside. The folder sat on the desk inside the house, thick enough now to feel real. I thought about calling Deacon and trying once more to reason with him. Then I remembered the key, the school packet, the post, June 1. This was not confusion, it was a pattern. Before I went to bed, I searched for Lowell Keene's number. He had handled some paperwork for Dad years earlier, and I knew he still worked in real estate and estate matters around Mount Lebanon. I left a short message. My name is Calder Voss. My family is using my address and claiming I agreed to give up my house. I need to know what my options are. Then I sent an email with the same words, because spoken things disappear too easily in my family. The next morning, Lowell called me back. He did not ask whether I was angry. He asked whose name was on the deed. I told Lowell Keene the truth in the plainest words I had left. My family wants my house, I said over the phone, standing in my kitchen with the folder open beside the coffee maker. They're using my address, telling people I agreed, and I need to know if the law still understands it's mine. Lowell did not comfort me. I appreciated that. Bring the deed, he said. Mortgage records too. Anything they used with your address. By 10 that morning, I was sitting in his office in Mount Lebanon with the folder on my lap. The room smelled like paper, coffee, and old wood polish. Framed degrees hung behind his desk. A tall file cabinet stood in the corner, the kind with drawers heavy enough to make a man think twice before opening one. Lowell had gray hair, wire-framed glasses, and the calm manner of someone who had watched families turn ordinary property into battlefields. He started with the deed. Not my feelings, not my mother, not Deacon's children. The deed. He read it, checked the mortgage statement, then looked up at me. You are the sole owner. I let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. No one else? I asked. No one else. Not your mother. Not your brother. No trust currently owns this property. Legally, they cannot take it from you. That should have felt like victory. It did not. It felt more like finding out the door had a lock after strangers had already walked through it. Lowell read the school packet next, then the screenshots from Kendra's post, then the photo of Silas's sketch. I told him about the key, about my mother giving it away, about June 1 being written like a move-in date for a life I never approved. When I finished, Lowell took off his glasses and set them on the desk. They do not have a house problem, Calder. They have a boundary problem. Hearing it from someone outside the family made my chest tighten. I had known it, but knowing something alone is different from hearing it named. He continued, You have options. Change the locks. Send formal notice. Document everything. If they keep using your address, that becomes a bigger issue. But I need to ask you something. Do you want to stay in that house and fight them from the front porch? I looked down at my hands. If I sell it, I said, am I letting them win? Lowell leaned back. Selling is not surrender if you choose it. Surrender is letting them make the choice for you. I sat with that for a while. The house was never just a building to me. It was the first place I had owned that did not come with family conditions attached. No one could tell me which room belonged to Deacon. No one could decide my paycheck was needed somewhere else. No one could turn my quiet into agreement. At least, that was what I had believed. Lowell gave me the name of a realtor, Tessa Marlowe. He said she handled private sales and did not need a yard sign to do her job. 2 days later, Tessa walked through my house with a small notebook and no pressure in her voice. She noticed the repaired porch rail, the fresh seal around the kitchen window, the fence line I had patched myself. In the garage, she stopped beside Dad's workbench and ran her eyes over the tools hanging above it. You took care of this place, she said. That simple sentence hurt worse than I expected. My own family had looked at the same walls and seen extra space. Tessa saw work. I built it so I'd finally have somewhere they couldn't take from me, I said. She did not answer right away. Then she closed her notebook. There are buyers who would move quickly for a house like this, especially in this district. We can keep it quiet. No open house. No sign. Only serious private showings. That evening, after she left, I walked room by room. In the kitchen, I remembered painting the cabinets while a Steelers game played on the radio. On the porch, I saw Dad kneeling with a crowbar, prying up a rotted board and telling me not to rush a repair just because I was tired. In the office, his wooden box sat in the center of the desk again. In the garage, I placed my palm on the workbench. Dad once told me wood cracks when pressure sits too long in one place. Standing there, I wondered if people did too. My phone lit up with a text from Deacon. Start clearing the basement. Kids are excited. Don't make this harder. I stared at it until the screen dimmed. For a few minutes, I considered calling Mom. Maybe if I explained it carefully, she would understand. Maybe if I told her the school form scared me, she would stop pretending this was generosity. Then I looked at the folder, the key, the school packet, the Facebook screenshots, Silas's sketch. Keeping peace had always sounded noble until I realized peace meant everyone else kept taking while I kept disappearing. I did not call her. The next morning, I called Tessa. Move forward, I said, quietly. Then I called Lowell and asked him to prepare anything I might need if my family tried to claim I had promised them something. He said to keep saving every message. For the next few weeks, life became strangely ordinary on the outside. I went to work. I bought groceries. I took the trash to the curb. Inside the house, though, I began packing only what mattered most. Dad's box, my records, a few tools, the evidence folder. There was no sign in the yard, no public listing, no family meeting, no warning. One evening, Deacon's SUV rolled slowly past my house. I saw him through the front window. He saw me too. I did not step outside. By then, Tessa had found a buyer, a high school science teacher named Arlen Brooks. He liked the garage, the fenced yard, and the quiet street. He did not know he was buying his way into the edge of a family war. I signed papers in quiet rooms while Deacon was labeling moving boxes with my nephew's name. By the time the moving truck turned onto the street, the house was no longer mine. Arlen Brooks had closed the week before. My name was off the papers. His name was on them. Dad's wooden box, my personal files, the evidence folder, and most of the tools from the garage were already packed away in a storage unit across town. I was parked half a block away that morning because Lowell had told me to stay close. Do not confront them unless you have to, he had said, but if they try to enter the property or harass the new owner, document it. So I sat in my truck with my phone ready and watched my family arrive at a house they still believed they had won. Deacon came first in his SUV. Kendra followed in the minivan. Then came the rental truck, white and loud, backing toward the curb with that sharp beeping sound that makes every neighbor look through a curtain. Mom pulled in last, stepping out with her church purse hooked over her arm like she had come to supervise a blessing. The truck door rolled up. That was when I saw the boxes. Silas's room, Willa's desk, kids' bathroom, kitchen. The words were written in thick black marker. Not maybe, not someday, not if Uncle Calder agrees. They had packed around a lie. Willa climbed out, holding her stuffed bear against her chest. Silas had a backpack over one shoulder and kept glancing at the house with that nervous hope children carry when adults have promised them something too big. The kids looked like they had come to a promise. The adults knew they had come to a theft. Deacon walked up to the porch with the old key in his hand. Even from across the street, I recognized the cloudy plastic tag hanging from it. Calder's spare. Emergency only. He slid the key into the lock. Everyone waited. He turned it. Nothing. He pulled it back, pushed it in again, and twisted harder. The key went in. The pass did not. Kendra shifted Willa's bag from one hand to the other. He changed the locks. Mom's mouth tightened. Call him. Deacon ignored both of them and knocked. Not polite, not uncertain. He hit the door like he still believed force would make the house remember him. Then the door opened. But I was not behind it. Arlen Brooks stood there in a gray t-shirt, calm but confused, looking at the moving truck, the boxes, and the family gathered on his porch. Deacon said, "Who are you?" Arlen looked at him. "I own this house." Mom stepped forward. "This is my son's house." Arlen's eyes moved from her to Deacon, then to the truck. "Not anymore. We closed last week." For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Kendra's face changed first. It was not guilt exactly. It was the look of a person watching a story she had trusted begin to tear down the middle. Deacon turned red. "That's impossible." Arlen stayed steady. "Sir, I do not know your family situation. I know I bought this house legally." Silas looked from his father to the stranger in the doorway. "Dad," he said softly, "is this not our house?" That was the sentence that got me out of my truck. I could have driven away. A part of me wanted to. The adults had created this mess. Let them explain it. Let them stand in it. But I knew Deacon. If I left, he would turn the truth into whatever protected him, and Silas would carry that lie for years. I crossed the street. Deacon saw me and came down the porch steps fast. "What did you do?" I stopped on the sidewalk. "I sold my house," Kendra said. "The children were promised stability." "Not by me." Mom's face twisted with the same anger she had shown at dinner. "You selfish loser. You let them come all this way?" I looked at the boxes, then at the key in Deacon's hand, then at Silas and Willa standing beside a truck full of expectations. "You brought my nephew and niece to a house I never gave you, with a key you were never supposed to have." Deacon pointed toward Arlen. "You embarrassed my family in front of a stranger." "No," I said. "You brought a moving truck to someone else's property." Mom said, "Your father would be ashamed." This time, the words struck me, but they did not steer me. "Take the kids home," I said. "This is between the adults who lied to them." Willa began to cry quietly into her bear. Kendra knelt beside her, whispering something I could not hear. Silas stared at the box with his name on it, like he no longer trusted the letters. Deacon told Kendra to call the police. Arlen spoke from the porch. "You can, but I have the closing documents inside." That settled the air faster than shouting could have. Across the street, I noticed Verna Holloway at her front window. She did not wave. She did not smile. She simply watched the public ending of the story my family had told without me. One by one, the boxes went back into the truck. Silas did not look at me when he got into the minivan. I could not blame him. Children do not understand property records. They understand promises. And the adults he trusted had dragged him to the wrong door. After the truck closed, Arlen stepped down from the porch. "I am sorry," I told him. "You did not buy a family war." He gave a tired little nod. "I bought a house. I would like it to stay that way." I almost smiled, but it did not reach anything in me. I had won the house back from them by letting it go. But watching those children stand beside that truck, I understood winning can still hurt. I still ask myself sometimes whether I should have warned them. Did I go too far by letting them come? Or did they lose the right to be warned when they brought a key they were never supposed to have? I drove away thinking it was over. The house was sold. The key had failed. A stranger had answered the door. There was nothing left for Deacon to take. 3 days later, he sent me an email with Dad's name in the subject line. "Dad's trust, you're done." Attached was a scanned document with my father's signature at the bottom of the first page. And for one terrible moment, I wondered if the dead could still be used to take from me. The subject line alone was enough to make the room feel smaller. "Dad's trust, you're done." I was sitting in a modest rental outside Bethel Park, surrounded by boxes I had not bothered to unpack. Dad's wooden box sat on a folding table near the wall. My coffee had gone cold. The house I had sold was behind me now, but Deacon had found the one door inside me that still opened. The attachment showed several scanned pages titled Orson Voss Family Protection Trust. At the bottom of the first page was my father's signature. Deacon's message was short. "You sold too early, little brother. Dad made sure family property stayed in the family. You are done." For a few minutes, I just stared at the screen. I had expected anger from Deacon. I had expected Mom to call me selfish again. What I had not expected was Dad's name appearing in my inbox like a verdict from the grave. My phone rang before I had time to think clearly. "Deacon," I answered. "You see it?" he asked. His voice was too calm. I saw the scan. Good. Then maybe you understand what you did. Dad protected family property. You sold it like it was only yours. It was mine. Mom's voice came from somewhere behind him. Your father would be ashamed of you, Calder. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Not because I believed her, because some old part of me still feared she might be right. I'm sending it to Lowell, I said. Deacon gave a small laugh. Run to a lawyer if you want. Dad already handled this. After the call ended, I carried my phone out to the small garage attached to the rental. Most of Dad's workbench was still wrapped in moving blankets, but I had uncovered the top. I stood beside it with Deacon's email open, staring at a signature that suddenly felt heavier than ink. Dad had been quiet when he was alive, too quiet sometimes. He fixed outlets, leveled shelves, repaired what he could reach. But when Mom favored Deacon, he often went still. I had spent years wondering if his silence meant he agreed. I forwarded everything to Lowell. He called back later that afternoon. This scan is missing pages, he said. I sat straighter. How can you tell? Page 3 refers to section 4.2. That section is not included. Then it jumps near the signature page. This was not scanned cleanly by accident. That sentence changed the air around me. Lowell told me not to answer Deacon again. He recognized the trustee's name from the partial document, Gideon Price, a retired bank trust officer who had handled some of Dad's estate planning. The next day, I met Lowell and Gideon in a quiet conference room. Gideon was in his 60s, careful with his words, the kind of man who placed each document on the table as if it mattered. He brought the full trust, not Deacon's version, the real one. Lowell read first. Then he stopped at a section Deacon's scan had skipped, primary residence protection for Calder Voss. I looked at those words and could not speak. Gideon folded his hands. Your father was specific, Calder. This clause names you. The trust did not own my house. It did not undo the sale. It did not give me magic power over anyone. It simply said that if any beneficiary tried to pressure, threaten, manipulate, or coerce me into surrendering my primary residence or property interest, the trustee could suspend that beneficiary's distributions. In plain English, Dad had seen this coming. Gideon's voice softened. Orson worried about your brother's entitlement. He worried about your mother protecting Deacon at your expense. My throat tightened. Then Gideon said the words I would remember most. He said you were the one they would come for when Deacon ran out of options. Dad's name had not been a weapon after all. It had been a warning, left for the day I finally needed it. As they reviewed the trust records, the rest of the picture came into focus. Deacon had requested early distributions more than once. Family hardship, temporary cash flow trouble, business pressure, overdue rent, credit cards, a failed sales venture he had dressed up as a short-term setback. Lowell looked over one page and said, this was never just about bedrooms. No, it was not. The kids had been the curtain. The house had been the escape plan. Deacon had called me a loser while trying to use my stability to cover his collapse. I had enough truth that night to call Mom. I could have sent the full trust to everyone who had commented on Kendra's post. I could have made noise. But noise had never protected me. Lowell recommended a formal meeting with Gideon present. The trust, the evidence, the key, the school packet, the screenshots, all of it would be reviewed in one room. I agreed. I had enough truth to burn the whole family down that night. But I did not want noise. I wanted witnesses. By the time Lowell scheduled the trust meeting, I thought Deacon had run out of weapons. Then he walked in carrying photographs of his children. Deacon did not come to the trust meeting empty-handed. But before I ever saw the folder in his hand, Silas called me. I was at the rental kitchen table, with the house pressure folder open beside a cup of coffee I had barely touched. Lowell had told me to bring everything. The key photos, the school packet, the Facebook screenshots, the email with Dad's name in the subject line, all of it. My phone rang just as I was putting the papers into my briefcase. Silas's name was on the screen. Hey, buddy, I said, keeping my voice easy. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Dad said we lost the house because you didn't care about us. I closed my eyes. No, I said carefully. I sold it because the adults made promises they didn't have the right to make. Are you mad at me? That one nearly broke my composure. Never, I said. Not for 1 second. After we hung up, I almost called Lowell and asked to postpone. I did not want Silas standing in the middle of this, even from a distance. But then I looked at the folder again and understood something clearly. Silence would only let Deacon keep teaching the child a lie. The meeting was held in Lowell's conference room. Gideon Price sat at the head of the table with the full trust in front of him. Lowell sat to my right. Deacon came in with Mom on one side and Kendra on the other. Kendra did not look at me. Deacon did. He looked calm. That worried me more than anger would have. Before Gideon could begin, Deacon opened a folder. "I'm not here to argue about the house anymore," he said. "I'm here because my children were humiliated." He spread photographs across the table. The moving truck, Willa holding her bear, Silas beside a box labeled Silas's room. One photo showed my truck parked across the street. Deacon tapped it with his finger. He knew they were coming. He sat there and waited. He wanted them crushed. Mom looked at me. "Even you know what you did." For a few seconds, I could not answer. I saw Willa's face again. I heard Silas asking if it was not their house. Deacon had found the one part of the truth that still hurt and wrapped a lie around it. I took a breath. "I know what they saw," I said. "That is why I told you to take them home." Lowell slid my folder forward. "Let us review the order of events," he said. He laid it out cleanly. The dinner demand, the unauthorized entry into my office, the emergency key from Mom, the Bethel Park School District packet with my address, Kendra's New Beginnings post, the June 1 comment, the moving truck, Deacon's email, the partial trust scan with missing pages. Kendra's face changed as each item landed. I looked at Deacon. "You brought them because you thought I wouldn't defend my home in front of them." He opened his mouth, but I kept going. "I sold a house. You sold them a lie." Kendra turned to him. "You told me," he agreed. Deacon's face tightened. He was supposed to. There it was. Not permission, expectation, not agreement, pressure. Lowell then placed another document on the table, an old notice sent after Dad's death. It showed Mom had received a summary of the trust, including the residence protection clause. I looked at her. "You knew Dad protected me?" Mom did not deny it. Her answer came softer than her usual attacks, but it hurt more. "You've always been stronger. Deacon breaks when life pushes him." I stared at her across that polished table. "So you decided I should break instead?" No one spoke. For years, I thought being called strong was praise. That day, it sounded like a sentence. Is being strong supposed to mean you never get protected? Gideon opened the trust. He read the clause in a steady voice. "Any beneficiary who pressured, threatened, manipulated, or coerced Calder Voss into surrendering his primary residence or property interest could have distributions suspended at the trustee's discretion." Deacon leaned forward. "That's not about me." Gideon looked at the school packet, the screenshots, the email, and the old key record. "It is now." Then he added, "Orson did want family protected. That is why this clause exists." Deacon tried one last time. He said he was trying to keep his children from losing everything. Gideon remained calm. "The trust is not punishing need. It is responding to coercion." Lowell placed Deacon's email on top of the file. "Dad's trust, you're done." "You use the trust itself as a weapon," Lowell said. Gideon closed the document. "Your distributions will be suspended pending full review." Mom looked shaken. Kendra stared at Deacon as if she had finally heard the missing part of their marriage out loud. I did not smile. It felt heavy, but it felt true. Then Gideon turned to the next section of the trust. "There is also the matter of the education accounts for Silas and Willa." Deacon's face went pale in a way I had not seen all day. Gideon did not raise his voice when he explained what would happen to the children's money, and somehow that made Deacon look more afraid. The room was still tense from the trust ruling. Deacon's distributions had just been suspended pending review. Mom sat with both hands folded on the table, her face pale. Kendra looked like she wanted to stand up and leave, but could not decide whether leaving would make her look guilty or awake. Gideon turned a page. "Orson also created education accounts for Silas and Willa," he said. "Those funds are protected. Tuition, books, approved school expenses, future training. That was their purpose." Deacon leaned forward. "Those are my children. If they're struggling now, that money should help them now." "It will help them," Gideon said, "but not by covering household debt, rent shortfalls, or business losses. Deacon's mouth opened, then closed. That was when I understood. The house had not been the only thing he had counted on. He had looked at Dad's trust, the way he looked at my home, as something that should bend toward his emergency. "So, now you're punishing my kids?" he said, turning toward me. I did not let Lowell answer for me. "No," I said. "I'm protecting them from the adults who use their names to steal from me." The room went quiet. Deacon shook his head like he had been deeply wronged. "You hear yourself? You sound proud of this." "I'm not proud," I said. "I'm done." Mom's eyes filled. "You are tearing this family apart." That old sentence, the final rope she always threw when I got too close to the truth. "No," I said. "I'm ending the part of this family where one son gets drained to keep another son comfortable." Her tears fell then. I did not enjoy them. She was still my mother. Some part of me still remembered her sewing a button on my school shirt, still remembered her bringing soup when I had the flu. But love does not erase what someone does with your trust. And her crying no longer gave her instructions over me. Kendra finally spoke, her voice smaller than before. "What does this mean for the accounts?" Gideon answered her directly. "Approved expenses can be paid to schools, programs, or vendors. No lump sums to parents. No withdrawals for personal use. Any request involving Silas or Willa comes through trustee review." Kendra looked at Deacon. Something between them shifted. Not a fight. Not yet. More like a door inside her had opened, and she did not like what she saw. She turned to me. I didn't know there was no agreement. I held her gaze. "You should have asked me before you posted my house online." She looked down. She did not argue. That was enough for me. Gideon finished the formal notes. Deacon's distributions would remain frozen while the trust reviewed the coercion evidence. The education funds would stay protected. Lowell added that any further harassment, false claims, or attempts to bother Arlen would be documented. There was no dramatic arrest, no shouting in a courthouse hallway, just paper, signatures, and consequences. Deacon lost access. He lost the story. And maybe worst of all for him, he lost the right to pretend everyone else had done this to him. I gathered my folder, thanked Lowell and Gideon, and left without looking back to see whether anyone followed. No one did. By late July, I was in Morgantown, West Virginia, in a smaller place with an uneven driveway and a garage that smelled faintly of fresh plywood. It was not as polished as the Bethel Park house. The kitchen cabinets needed work. The fence leaned in one corner. The porch light flickered when it rained, but it was mine by choice. I set Dad's workbench against the east wall, where morning light crossed the old scratches in the wood. I did not bring the house with me. I brought the part of my father that had taught me how to stand. One afternoon, while sorting small tools, I opened a drawer and found the old plastic tag. Calder spare, emergency only. Not the key, not the lock, not the permission they thought came with it. Just the tag. I held it for a while. Once, that word spare had felt like a sentence. Then it became proof of how easily they had treated access as ownership. Now it was only a worn piece of plastic small enough to rest in my palm. A key could be spare. A son should never be. Mom called several times that month. I answered once, near dusk, while standing in the garage doorway. "We were only trying to help Deacon," she said. "No," I told her. "You were trying to save Deacon by spending me." She cried. She said she never wanted to lose me. I believed part of that, but I also believed the part of me that needed distance. So I told her I needed time, and I did not explain how much. I did not give her my full address. I did not invite her to start over on my doorstep. Some boundaries only work if they have a lock. I did not cut off Silas and Willa. They had been used, not guilty. For Silas, I sent a book about bridges with a note that said I was proud of him. For Willa, I mailed colored pencils and a sketchbook, because that little yellow room she drew had stayed with me longer than I wanted to admit. Maybe one day they will understand. Maybe they will not. I cannot force that day to come. What I know is this: I still love those kids. Maybe part of me would always love my mother too. But love is not a deed transfer, and staying is not always loyalty. If you have ever had to walk away from people you still loved because staying meant losing yourself, tell me in the comments. I read every story, especially the quiet ones. That evening, I closed the drawer on the old tag, and stepped outside. The air smelled like cut grass and rain coming over the hills. The wound was not gone, but it had stopped deciding where I lived. They called me selfish because I finally stopped being useful. But for the first time in my life, I did not feel guilty for being free.